questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Après que Pékin
Beijing has interfered with 2 elections to help the Prime Minister. Beijing targeted several members of parliament and threatened them. Beijing gave $140,000 to the Trudeau Foundation to influence the Prime Minister. And now, the Prime Minister finally appointed a special rapporteur to look into it, but he was actually another member of the Trudeau Foundation and a friend of the Prime Minister. And he's now trying to cover up the truth. Will the Prime Minister finally fire the rapporteur and start a public inquiry? The Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Speaker, the only person here who's trying to cover up the truth seems to be the Leader of the Opposition himself. When he was offered the opportunity to look at sensitive documents that the special rapporteur used to reach the conclusions that were made public last week, when that was offered to him, the Leader of the Opposition refused because he prefers to play politics about an issue that affects Canadian democracy. It's in the interest of all members of the House of Commons to support measures that will strengthen our democratic institutions.
Opposition.
No, what I refused is to be silenced. I will not be. The government will not pull me into a room, stamp public documents secret, and then tell me I can't speak, because we need to speak about the fact that Beijing interfered to help the Prime Minister in 2 successive elections, that Beijing threatened members of Parliament to try and win influence, and that Beijing gave $140,000 to the Trudeau Foundation to buy the favor of this Prime Minister. And then he names a former member of the Trudeau Foundation and a ski buddy to look into the matter, who has now only tried to cover it up. Will he fire this fake rapporteur and call a public inquiry now?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Speaker, it is the Leader of the Conservative Party of Canada who is silencing himself by refusing to take the briefings. It is the Leader of the Conservative Party of Canada who is covering his own eyes from the same information that Mr. Johnston had access to, which other nonpartisan professional public servants had access to, and it leaves Canadians wondering why. Is it because he would rather play partisan games than do the hard work? I think we know the answer to that question, and it's yes.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, you don't need a fake briefing or a secret stamp to know what the documents that have already been quoted verbatim in the media because of leaks by a seriously distressed security agency that is trying to expose what has gone on behind the scenes. We now know what is surreal. There are at least 2 police stations run by Beijing, a foreign dictatorship in Canada. That minister said they were closed. Now we find out that not only are they open, but they got tax dollars from this government. Will they shut the police stations and call a public inquiry?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Speaker, the Leader of the Conservative Party of Canada is sinking in the quicksand of his own logic, calling briefings fake. What does he think that the public servants who work in the security establishment have been doing other than advising the government on how we can protect the people who defend our democracy every day? If he's serious about it, he will take the briefings, roll up his sleeves, sit at the table, and help us defend our democracy from foreign interference.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
What do I think that the public service at CSIS have been doing? I know what they've been doing. They've been picking up the phone and calling the media to blow the whistle on the cover-up on this side of the House of Commons. Ils ont prouvé qu'il y a au moins...
They have shown that there are at least 2 police stations that are still open and that received taxpayer money. Not Canadian police stations, but Beijing police stations. Mr. Speaker, will this government finally close down these police stations and start a public inquiry? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, it is the leader of the Conservative Party who wants to close his eyes to the information.
Work with the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada to make sure that he has access to the same classified information that Mr. Johnston had, that the two panels who verified the integrity of 2019 and 2021 had, that NCCOP will have, that NSIR will have, and it is him and him alone who refuses to take this issue seriously because he refuses to take the brief.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I refuse to be silenced, Mr. Speaker. Unlike other members of the government, given the tradition in this place is that opposition members can pose questions to any member of the government. So my question is to the Leader of the NDP. He has said that he wants a public inquiry. Well, now's the time for him to prove it. Yep. Will the member for leading the NDP state clearly now that either the government calls a public inquiry or he breaks off his coalition?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we've watched as a party that once recognized David Johnston as one of the most outstanding.
I'm going to interrupt and ask that the Honourable Minister start over. It just got noisy all of a sudden. I'm not sure exactly what happened, and so I'll ask everyone to take a deep breath. Please restart.
Mr. Speaker, what we've watched is the party opposite, who once recognized David Johnston is not only an outstanding Canadian, but it's somebody worthy of being Governor General of this country, appointed under Stephen Harper, that now, because his report doesn't conform with their politics, it doesn't conform with their political interests, that they're attacking and maligning his character. And this is part, Mr. Speaker, of a pattern of the party opposite, which they are more interested in politics, they are more interested in making partisan points than they are in the facts on the ground. There is not a member of this House who does not stand strongly and firmly in support of democracy and against those.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, let's not mince words. David Johnston's report on Chinese interference is a farce. No one accepts it except the Prime Minister and China, which must be very pleased. We should not let the Prime Minister get away without a public inquiry. Because not to have a public inquiry means that there will be no inquiry on threats to elected officials, no inquiry about the Trudeau Foundation, or on the intimidation suffered by the Chinese diaspora, or about the 11 candidates that were supported by Beijing. This masquerade is just protecting the Prime Minister. When will there finally be a public, independent public inquiry? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, I would encourage the Leader of the Bloc Québécois to accept the government's offer to bring the Bloc Québécois up to date on all of the sensitive and detailed information that Mr. Johnston and the Committee of Parliamentarians that includes representatives of the Bloc Québécois and other opposition parties, that all of them saw. They all looked at this intelligence and the facts. And I'd encourage the Leader of the Bloc Québécois to do the same thing before putting forward partisan remarks. This is a serious matter and deserves a serious reaction. I hear some very clear, very distinct voices that can be recognized in the House. I'm sure they wouldn't want to be named publicly.
Both languages, I might say, that's very Canadian, but it's still not parliamentary. So I'm sure the honourable members don't want me to name them. So we'll just go on to the next question. L'honorable député de la Prairie. Monsieur.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, this report's only goal is to protect the Prime Minister, not to cast light on Chinese interference. That's why no one has changed their mind about the fact that we need a public inquiry. Both Quebecers and Canadians are asking for that inquiry. The polls are clear. This report has just been published to help the Prime Minister. It's been published by a man chosen by the Prime Minister. That's not what people in this House want. So I will say that the Bloc Québécois will be insisting every day until the Prime Minister launches the inquiry. Does he understand that he can't get away as easily as all that? The Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. Once again, Mr. Speaker, I would invite my colleague for La Prairie to speak to the leader of his party and take advantage of this government's serious offer to share sensitive information, so that the Leader of the Bloc Québécois and his colleague on the committee of parliamentarians responsible for closely examining this very matter, I'd encourage the leader of the Bloc Québécois to look at the facts that David Johnston and the committee used to reach their conclusions. Mr. Speaker, I think that's the very least serious action we could ask for from the Bloc Québécois on such an important matter. The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Weekend that the negotiations with Stellantis to resume the production of the EV battery factory in Windsor are not going well. I don't know why the Conservatives are moaning about this. This is very serious. There's 2,500 jobs at stake, and it's the future of the automotive sector in our country. So will this government ensure that those jobs don't end up going to the U.S. and instead we keep those jobs here in Canada and do everything possible to make this deal go forward? While the Conservatives want this deal to not go forward, we want it to go forward.
You're here.
Thank you.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the answer absolutely is yes. We will ensure the deal goes forward. We will ensure the jobs will stay in Canada. That's why we have a $120 billion clean economy plan. And you know what else, Mr. Speaker? We're going to ensure that Ontario pays its fair share because this is an investment in a particular province. And we know that Canada is a country of regions and regional equity is really important. And we're going to ensure the company comes forward with a reasonable offer as well.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
The government needs to back up Mesures with action and protect the factory. Partout au Canada, les prix.
Throughout Canada, rents are soaring, and Quebec is no exception. Rents are going up so quickly. In Montreal, a two-bedroom is now renting for more than $2,100. For most Quebecers, that means that there's not much left to pay for their bills and groceries. When will this government finally take action to put an end to this crisis?
The Honourable Secrétaire Parlementaire.
Monsieur le Président, je remercie mon collègue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his question and remind him that in Quebec alone, ever since the National Housing Strategy, Quebec has received more than $5 billion to build thousands of housing units in order to renovate and build, and we will continue to work with the government of Quebec, especially on the rapid housing strategy that we finally have an agreement with Quebec on.
Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Mr. Speaker, I'm in trouble. I'm being investigated, and my company's being investigated. But don't worry, colleagues, it's going to be okay. I've appointed my longtime neighbor and friend to investigate. Wait. Sorry, I thought for a moment there I was the Prime Minister. Appointing a friend to investigate you is unethical, absolutely. No one other than these Liberals put any faith in this Old Friends report. Mr. Speaker, what will it take for these Liberals to finally call a public inquiry?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, and I quote, Mr. Johnson has a strong record of public service, a broad base of support and impressive list of achievements. He has extensive legal expertise, a comprehensive understanding of government, and a deep appreciation of the duties and tasks before him. David Johnson represents the best of Canada. That was said by Stephen Harper, Mr. Speaker. And it's interesting that somebody who they lifted up and venerated as one of the greatest Canadians, when he disagrees with them, suddenly is roadside trash. Suddenly, the things he says means nothing, Mr. Speaker. It is despicable, and I have great disregard for the way in which somebody
Are we okay to continue? There's a lot of chatter going on. If members want to talk amongst themselves, it's nice to see you getting along, but go into the lobby or leave. You don't have to be here. If you want to talk amongst yourselves, that's okay. But don't do it here while somebody's trying to hear what the question and what the answer is. Do I have your agreement on that? Agreed. Very good. The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Mr. Speaker, a conflict of interest arises when there's an appearance of conflict. Appointing your old friend to investigate you is an absolute appearance of conflict. To do that knowingly is completely unethical. So you get to the point where you have to ask, why? Why would you point a friend? What are they hiding? Mr. Speaker, why wouldn't you call a public inquiry? The question Canadians ask every day now is, what are they hiding? Mr. Speaker, I'll ask again. What will it take for these Liberals to finally get rid of this conflict of interest report and call a public inquiry?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, of course, David Johnston has been a great friend to Canada. He is somebody who's dedicated his entire life, and the idea that Mr. Johnston, after a lifetime of dedicated service, including service that the party opposite called him into,
Ask the Honourable Government House Leader to start over. I'm having a hard time hearing. There's some comments being made, some shouting being made. So we'll just wait a second, maybe have everything calm down. The Government House Leader, please.
Here you go, Mark.
Mr. Speaker, what is clear is that David Johnston has dedicated his life to this country, and that the reality is that national security is something which I know every member of this House is deeply seized with, and that's precisely why we are having a hard time understanding why the Leader of the Opposition refuses to take his eyes off of information, why he refuses to take his hands from in front of his face and look at the information that he's been asked to look at in the interest of national security, so that we can work together to preserve the democracy that we also do.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
The Prime Minister appointed a family friend and Trudeau Foundation member to investigate, more like cover up, foreign interference by Beijing in our democracy. And that family friend then appointed another Trudeau Foundation member to supposedly clear them of their conflict of interest, and then hired a lifetime Liberal donor to work for them. This has been a sham from the very beginning. Canadians don't have confidence in this process. That's why they want a public inquiry, and that's why that was what was passed in this House. Will the Prime Minister call one today?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives can continue to malign Mr. Johnston despite the fact that he has distinguished public service, which was recognized by a former Conservative Prime Minister in Stephen Harper. The fact is that his first report speaks for itself in its quality, which looked at the most accessible information and verified that the 2019 and 2021 elections were free and fair, and which carves out a path in order to bring Canadians along in the way in which we can protect our democratic institutions. It is solely the Conservatives who want to continue to engage in partisanship rather than defend the national interest. They should reverse.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, if the minister doesn't know what a conflict of interest is, let me give him an example. The Trudeau Foundation takes $140,000 from the dictatorship in Beijing. Then, in investigating foreign interference, the Prime Minister, who shares the same name as the foundation, which was the target of a foreign influence operation, appoints a member of that very foundation, two members of that foundation, in fact, to investigate foreign interference. They don't understand what a conflict of interest is, and that's exactly why we need a public inquiry to get to know what these Liberals knew, when they knew it, and we can restore confidence in our democratic institutions. Will they call the inquiry today?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the character of the person that they're maligning was actually David Johnston. He was the person that they appointed to look into the allegations against former Conservative Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. So it was okay for them to choose him to look into malfeasance for their former Prime Minister and their former leader, but now all of a sudden they don't trust him. All of a sudden he is not a credible Canadian. Mr. Speaker, it is beyond all reasonability that they will attack and malign, frankly, anybody who stands in the way or disagrees with advancing their political interest.
Honorable député de Mégantic-L'Érable.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Well, in the end, the special rapporteur wasn't all that special, except for his relationship with the Prime Minister's family and his attachment to the Communist Chinese regime. Otherwise, how can we understand the fact that despite a majority vote in this House, experts' recommendations, and what most Canadians want, Mr. Johnston still rejected holding a public independent inquiry on Chinese interference? The Prime Minister chose the rapporteur's title, mandate, and his conclusions. This rapporteur may be special, but he's not independent at all. When will this Prime Minister put an end to the circus and call for a public inquiry? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, our government is taking the matter of foreign interference very seriously. Ever since we formed government, we took it seriously. The former Conservative government was in power in 2013 when intelligence agencies identified the growing threat of Chinese and foreign interference. And yet the Conservatives did nothing, absolutely nothing, to strengthen our democratic institutions. That's exactly the opposite of what we did. When we formed government, we depended on expert recommendations to strengthen our democratic institutions. The Honourable Member from Mégantic-l'Érable. Well, here's what's so special about the Prime Minister's rapporteur. He's considered an old friend of China. He started a Confucius Institute related to the Chinese regime at Waterloo University. He received an honorary doctorate from a Chinese Communist Party official. 3 of his daughters studied in Chinese universities. He was a member of the Trudeau Foundation, which received $140,000 from the Beijing regime, and he himself boasted that he was a close friend of the Trudeau family. Will the Prime Minister finally put an end to this flagrant conflict of interest by launching an independent public inquiry, which should also now cast light on the appointment of his own friend to the position of Special Rapporteur? The Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Speaker, perhaps my colleague across the way should consult his old boss, Mr. Harper, the former Conservative Prime Minister of Canada, who asked that same individual, Mr. Johnston, to serve not only as Governor-General of Canada, but also to advise the former Conservative government on a matter as important as a public inquiry on the Airbus situation. So, if the Conservatives believed in this individual to have the judgment to carry out those functions, I find it very unfortunate that for partisan reasons they seem to be giving up on that confidence. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, all groups from the Chinese diaspora that are fighting for human rights in Canada are asking for a public inquiry on Beijing interference. Mehmet Todi, representative of the Uyghur community in Canada, Hong Kong pro-democracy dissidents, Falun Gong, Tibetan independence activists, all of those, well before the scandal, were suffering Chinese intimidation tactics on Canadian soil, and they've all denounced the Liberals in the Globe and Mail. These are full Canadian citizens who are being abandoned by their own government. The Liberals must make amends to these people and start a public independent inquiry. The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to reassure my colleague and all other colleagues in this House that it goes without saying that if diplomats who are here in Canada do not respect the Vienna Convention, then of course we will declare them persona non grata. And that's exactly what we did with the former consul in Toronto, the Chinese consul in Toronto, Mr. Zhao Wei. And so I will be very pleased to work with my colleague now and always to support the Uyghur community, to support efforts to cast light on human rights violations in China and elsewhere. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Well, I'm not the one who's asking for this. They are. And I don't want to hear anything about this security reasons excuse, because we don't have the memory of a goldfish in the Bloc Québécois. We remember the matter of Maher Arar, the Canadian citizen who was tortured in Syria. There were many security reasons in his file, and yet there was still a public independent inquiry on this, which was launched by a Liberal government, of all things. So we see that when they want to, they're perfectly able to ask for such an inquiry. So why don't they want to this time? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, with all due respect for my colleague, the independent Special Rapporteur, Mr. Johnston, carried out a meticulous investigation of classified material, and he closely checked the conclusions of 2 other independent panels. And thanks to that, he showed that the 2019 and 2021 elections were free and fair, and based on that, he has created recommendations to bring everyone into an open and transparent conversation on this matter in order to create new tools to defend our democratic institutions. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, clearly the Liberals are capable of organizing a public inquiry on events in Syria. even though those events involve the secret services of 3 countries. But apparently, they're incapable of a public inquiry on Chinese interference in Canada. Only one thing is actually missing here, Mr. Speaker: political will. Political will to overcome partisanship and to protect democracy itself, and the political will to protect citizens of Chinese origin who are suffering real intimidation from the regime. When will the Liberals pull themselves together and order a public, independent inquiry? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I agree with my colleague that we need to ensure that all Canadians and diaspora communities, they need to be at the center of our approach, and that's exactly what we saw in Mr. Johnson's recommendations. We need to use public hearings to launch a conversation which will be fact-based, not fear-based, to study all options in order to grant new tools to protect our democratic institutions. This is not a partisan matter. This should be something that brings together all Canadians.
Mr. Speaker, NDP Liberal tax hikes make life cost more for struggling Canadians. The first carbon tax makes everything more expensive, and it fuels inflation, so most Canadians pay more than they'll ever get back. Now, their second carbon tax will add over $1,100 more per household, and there's no fake rebate scheme for this one. Combined, that's almost $4,000 in new taxes per Alberta family, and it hurts low-income Canadians the most. When will the costly coalition axe their carbon taxes so Canadians can actually afford gas, groceries, and home heating?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And every time we put forward an affordability measure, Mr. Speaker, dental, rental, the Canada Child Benefit, what does the opposition do? They vote against it, Mr. Speaker. They have no credibility on affordability. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, the Climate Action Rebate is an affordability measure. 8 out of 10 families will get more back than they pay at the pumps, Mr. Speaker. While the opposition is focused on cryptocurrency and conspiracy theories, we're focused on Canadians, we're focused on affordability, we're focused on fighting climate change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Office's latest budget confirms that the Prime Minister's new rules on clean fuel are not only regressive, but that low-income households will pay a lot more than high-income households. But on the PM's website, it says that we will offer tax relief to middle-class Canadians while asking the richest Canadians to pay a little more. This Prime Minister seems to have trouble telling the truth. Can he explain to single mothers in Quebec why they will be paying a lot more? The Honourable Minister of... Mr. Speaker, we need to ensure that life is affordable for Canadians, and we have implemented multiple measures to ensure that things will be more affordable in future, but it is also important to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We need a plan, Mr. Speaker, to fight climate change. As almost all parties in this House have, but not the Conservatives, no plan to fight climate change. They seem to want to leave our children and grandchildren to the mercy of a cruel future. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we have a plan, and our plan is to leave money in the pockets of Quebecers and Canadians, which is something that this government doesn't seem to understand. Mr. Speaker, the PPO was clear. It will cost $436 more per year for Quebecers and Canadians. Is that a plan to help the environment? No, it's just a plan that will make everyone poorer. Will a single mother who doesn't have enough money to bring her kids to soccer, will she understand that she'll be paying $436 more with this new tax? Who's telling the truth, the PPO or this government? The Honourable Minister for Families. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask my honourable colleague what he will tell single mothers when their children don't have clean air to breathe because of climate change. I'd like to ask my honourable colleague, what is the price of a healthy environment? Mr. Speaker, it's not just that they don't have a plan to fight climate change, but in addition, when we bring forward measures to help Canadians, they vote against them. We will be here to fight climate change, protect our children, and ensure that life remains affordable. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Mr. Speaker, the average rent for a two-bedroom apartment in Halifax is over $2,500. That's a 25% jump from last year. And workers' wages aren't keeping up. People can no longer afford to pay rent because the Liberals are allowing big housing corporations to buy up rental units and jack up those rents. Families shouldn't have to compete with multi-million-dollar corporations to find a place to call home. When are the Liberals going to stand up for Canadians and make rent affordable?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Président, je suis d'accord avec ma collègue sur le...
Speculation with real property does contribute to increasing costs. That's why at this government, we set up a tax on residential property that belongs to people who aren't Canadians. We want to limit foreign investment in this field in the country, and we'll continue to work with the provinces because that is an area of shared jurisdiction.
I wrote an urgent letter to the Ministers of Public Safety and Immigration about 700 Punjabi international students who are victims of a targeted exploitation scheme. A consultant used fake university admission letters for their student visa without their knowledge. As a result, 150 students are scheduled to be deported. This is unacceptable. The Minister of Immigration says victims of fraud should not be punished. We need more than words. Will this government immediately stay the deportation orders for these students and provide them with a pathway to permanent status?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear. Our focus is on identifying culprits, not penalizing victims. Victims of fraud will have an opportunity to demonstrate their situation and present evidence to support their case. We recognize the immense contribution of international students that brings to our country, and Mr. Speaker, we will continue supporting them.
Member for Halifax West.
Speaker, over the weekend, thousands of Nova Scotians have had to flee their homes as wildfires spread across my province. One fire is ongoing and still not under control in Upper Tantallon and Hammonds Plains areas in my riding of Halifax West. People's homes have been put at risk in the blink of an eye. The situation is so serious that Halifax Regional Municipality has declared a state of local emergency. Can the Minister of Emergency Preparedness update this House on the situation on the ground and the conversations our government has been having with the province?
Sure. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague from Halifax West for this very important question and for the strong advocacy of all of our colleagues from Nova Scotia. Let me first take the opportunity to commend the incredible hard work by firefighters, first responders, and community volunteers who have been working tirelessly to protect Nova Scotians throughout this event. We are hearing the reports that many homes have been lost, and our thoughts are with the over 16,000 people who've been displaced during this extremely challenging time. My office has been in regular contact with our provincial counterparts. I spoke with Minister John Lohr of the provincial government this morning to ensure that they will have the support that they need. Our shared priority is the safety of all Nova Scotians, and we will be there to help all of those impacted as they recover from this tragic event.
Member for Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Mr. Speaker, while Canadians are struggling to put food on the table, pay their mortgages, and put gas in their cars, the Liberals are doubling down on their disastrous carbon tax, a tax that will increase the cost of a litre of gas by 41 cents and increase the price of everything. Now, their second carbon tax will add 17 cents. Including GST, that's 61 cents. Just how high does the Prime Minister want prices to go?
Great question.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives don't seem to realize that there is a cost to climate change. Mr. Speaker, there was a $9 billion impact to the Canadian economy, to BC in particular, from the fires, drought, and floods that happened there. 600 people died under the heat dome, Mr. Speaker. A $4 billion impact from Hurricane Fiona, Mr. Speaker. And fires are raging in Nova Scotia and northern Alberta. What is it going to take for the Conservatives to stop the denial and take climate change seriously? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Well, Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister doesn't care about monetary policy, Canadians pay the price. These combined carbon taxes will cost Saskatchewan families $2,840. That means less available dollars for groceries, gas, and mortgage payments. This Liberal financial crisis is already forcing 1.5 million Canadians to use food banks in a single month. With gas prices already at $1.60 a litre, just how high does this government want prices to go?
How high? The Honourable Minister of Sports.
Monsieur le Président, alors qu'on est à peine au début de la saison.
At the beginning of the hot season in Canada, and there's forest fires raging in many areas in Canada, which are going to lead to extremely high costs for families, municipalities, provinces, and the federal government, it's completely irresponsible that not only do the Conservatives want to remove the price on pollution, but they're going to vote against the budget that has concrete measures to help families. With the high cost of living, that's irresponsible.
Bay Central Notre Dame.
Mr. Speaker, carbon tax 1 and 2 will hammer Atlantic Canadians, ranging from $2,081 in PEI to $2,166 in my home province. Atlantic premiers, including the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, begged the Prime Minister to not put carbon tax on home heating fuel. Their requests fell on deaf ears. Now these premiers, including Premier Fury, asked the Environment Minister to not implement carbon tax too. So will this Liberal government stop trampling over the people of Newfoundland and Labrador and axe this useless carbon tax?
The Honourable Minister for Northern Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've heard from our colleagues on both sides of the House about the devastating fires in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. I'd like to remind my colleagues about the devastation of Hurricane Fiona. All that comes with a price. It's sad that the others don't have a plan to address all this, because there is more coming, Mr. Speaker, and I hope and pray that no one is hurt in this, because there are more disasters coming. We have a plan to address this climate change. I wish the people across the aisle did.
The Honourable Member for Coast Bay Central Notre Dame.
Mr. Speaker, there they go again with that stupid guilt trip. Fishermen like the Jacobs brothers.
I'm sorry, I don't think that's, I know it's an emotional word, but I don't think it's a parliamentary word. I'm going to let the Honourable Member start over and use proper language. Please.
Mr. Speaker, there they go again with that unbelievable guilt trip. The Jacobs brothers from Fogo Island and fishermen like them who take to the ocean in Canada's most dangerous profession are going to be hammered when carbon tax is placed on the very fuel that they need to feed their families. So will this government that knows their carbon tax is a failure axe this useless carbon tax and stop trampling on the people of Newfoundland and Labrador?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that we can all agree that affordability is very important. That is why we put into place programs like the heat pump program, which will directly benefit Atlantic Canadians disproportionately across the country. But it's also important, Mr. Speaker, that we actually have a plan to fight climate change, which is an existential threat to the future of the human race. It is appalling that the party opposite has no plan to fight climate change. It has no plan for the economy of the future in terms of building an economy that can thrive in a low-carbon future. Later this week, I will be in Newfoundland to make a major announcement that is the direct result of having an appropriate, thoughtful plan to fight climate change.
L'honorable député de Laurentides-Labelle.
Monsieur le Président, selon le rapporteur.
Mr. Speaker, according to David Johnston's report, Chinese interference is everyone else's fault. The media, CSIS, public servants. In short, everyone's fault except China's and not the government's. Seriously, the government would like an inquiry into Chinese interference that doesn't talk about Chinese interference and doesn't talk about Liberals targeted by it. No one's going to accept this charade. When is there going to be a public, independent commission of inquiry? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, as a government, we acted from the very outset to set up mechanisms to review our measures to counter foreign interference in democratic institutions. A parliamentary committee, which represents all parties, will have access to the most confidential information to assess measures in place and make recommendations to the government on how they could be reinforced. That's exactly the work that we're looking forward to doing. Mr. Speaker, it's almost unbelievable in terms of what the government wants us to believe by accepting David Johnston's conclusions. The inquiry into Chinese interference shouldn't be about interference, but only about bureaucratic processes around it. David Johnston, the man chosen by the Prime Minister, should be able to see it through to the end. And its conclusions will only be revealed behind closed doors to people sworn to secrecy for the rest of their lives. Mr. Speaker, they can't be serious. If that's not trying to muddy the waters, what is it? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, all of Canada's allies in national security take steps to protect the most confidential information pertaining to national security. I know the Bloc doesn't like it, but that's exactly how a responsible government works. However, we accepted the recommendations of the special rapporteur, and we're going to share information with political representatives in the government. My colleague for public safety and the Prime Minister have successfully dealt with those issues.
The Prime Minister is dropping the hammer on Canadian families who are already struggling to put food on the table. He is crushing Canadians with yet another carbon tax on July 1st. Well, here's what's going to happen. Canadian farmers are already facing $150,000 a year in carbon taxes on Carbon Tax 1. Carbon Tax 2 will make farming financially impossible. It will also increase diesel prices 25 cents a litre, further driving up the cost of food. 8 million Canadians are already using a food bank every single month. They should be embarrassed. Why does this Prime Minister not realize when you increase taxes, farmers go bankrupt, Canadians go hungry?
The Honourable Minister for Families.
You know, Mr. Speaker, what I find very disturbing is that we haven't heard a single word about the wildfires from the Conservative Party of Canada that are raging across the country right now. Instead of talking about the impacts.
Order. 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 I just want to remind people that shouting someone down can be considered a form of bullying, and nobody wants to be accused of being a bully. The Honourable Minister, from the top, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I hit a nerve with the Conservatives because they're quite agitated to the fact that I pointed out.
The Honourable Member for Regina Louvain has a very strong voice and tends to drown everyone out, so I just want to remind him to keep it down. The Honourable Minister from the top, again, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I hit a nerve with the Conservatives because they're recognizing that they haven't spoken about wildfires and the thousands of their own constituents that have been driven from their homes. Instead of talking about the real impact and cost of climate change, they choose to talk about the fact that we are actually having a plan and actually fighting it because we care about Canadians. We care about their future. And there's no future for Canadians if we're not protecting their livelihoods, their lives, Mr. Speaker, quite frankly, and making sure that we are fighting climate change while protecting them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Speaker, I don't
hear them talk about agriculture. So carbon tax 1 is already driving up the cost of food production. And now carbon tax 2 will increase the cost of diesel, pricing our farmers out of the market. Inflating the price of groceries makes it more expensive for families to put food on the table. Rising input costs puts our Canadian farmers at a competitive disadvantage to the point where we're going to be bringing in food from South America cheaper than we can grow it on our own backyard here at home. So, Mr. Speaker, why is the Prime Minister set on crushing Canadian farmers with taxes and starving Canadian families?
The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Comment...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we all know, the first people impacted by climate change and extreme weather events are our farmers. The Conservatives are using entirely different language about this. We're going to encourage biofuels, which means supporting our canola farmers. I'm surprised that our Conservative friends aren't seeing that it's a good thing for canola farmers. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the government's doing nothing to make food more affordable. With its second carbon tax, farmers will be squeezed even harder. Food prices will rise even higher. Food bank use is at record levels, such as that at Moisson-Beauce in my riding. It lacks the resources to keep the shelves stocked. We need policies to reduce the cost of food and inputs for farmers. When will the Prime Minister put Canadians' food first? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind my colleague of certain measures we have implemented, such as the Canada Child Benefit or different benefits for low-income workers, or measures for offering dental care. Local food infrastructure is being supported, and that supports things like community gardens and other local initiatives.
Number 4, Mississauga, Streetsville.
Mr. Speaker, as the first Filipina member of this House, I join my colleagues in working to strengthen ties between Canada and the Philippines. Canada is home to a nearly 1 million people of Filipino origin, and that number is growing every single day. As we conclude Asian Heritage Month and on the eve of Filipino Heritage Month, can the Minister of Foreign Affairs outline the vital role that this relationship plays as part of our government's ambitious new Indo-Pacific strategy?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my colleague and friend from Mississauga, Streetsville for her important advocacy and her fantastic work. It was my first trip to the Philippines, and we know the country is extremely important in the context of our Indo-Pacific strategy. I had the chance to meet with the government members, also with civil society and business leaders. And of course, as we head into Filipino Heritage Month, I look forward to engaging even more with the Filipino community. I was in Winnipeg just last week doing that, and I look forward to working with my colleague from Mississauga, Streetsville on this very issue. Thank you so much.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton West.
Over $300,000, Mr. Speaker. That's how much this Liberal government has gifted to charities identified as hosting Beijing's illegal police stations in Canada. Now, this government famously disqualified faith-based charities from the same student summer jobs funding for not agreeing to Liberal ideology. Apparently, though, charities identified as hosting Beijing's illegal police stations do qualify as matching the Liberals' value attestation. So why, Mr. Speaker, is this government funding Beijing's illegal police stations instead of shutting them down?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
You know, Mr. Speaker, every single one of us in this chamber has a responsibility to take the issue of foreign interference seriously. But what we have seen from the Conservatives is the exact opposite. They have voted against legislation to give our national security establishment more powers to fight this scourge. Mr. Speaker, we heard their own national campaign director in the last election say that their members of their caucus didn't take this issue seriously, and now we have the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada who refuses to take the briefing. I say through you, Mr. Speaker, to him, take the briefing, take this issue seriously so we can fight foreign interference together.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops Thompson Jason Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, I spent most of my adult life working in the criminal justice system, and I can say unequivocally that I've never seen bail in such a precarious state. After 8 years of this Liberal government, violent crime is up 32%. The wheels really started to fall off with the passing of Bill C-75. And now the Liberals have tabled amendments to bail that, in my reading, would not have applied to Constable Pirjala's alleged killer. Mr. Speaker, when will this Liberal government undo the harmful effects of Bill C-75 to end catch and release and keep Canadians safe?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, Bill C-75 codified a number of Supreme Court of Canada decisions and did not fundamentally change the law of bail in Canada. However, Mr. Speaker, listening to provincial premiers, provincial ministers of justice and public safety, listening to police officers, we have proposed amendments to the bail regime to answer their concerns. Mr. Speaker, here's the Canadian Chiefs of Police. We commend the governments for acting on the urgency for legislative change and recognizing that our amendments were not calling for a complete overhaul of Canada's bail system. Mr. Speaker, we're listening and we're getting results.
The Honourable Member for Flamborough-Glenbrook.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of these Liberals, violent crime is up 32%. Recently in Toronto, a 75-year-old woman was approached from behind and stabbed in the neck. Mr. Speaker, this Liberal bail legislation fails on bail reform. Under the proposed bill, the accused killer of OPP Constable Greg Kazala and countless other repeat violent offenders would still have been released on bail. Mr. Speaker, will the government stop the catch and release agenda, stop making our streets more dangerous, undo their irresponsible changes in Bill C-75?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, again, from the Canadian Chiefs of Police, we're convinced that the legislative changes put forth in Bill C-48 will go a long way to help eliminate the preventable harm and senseless tragedies attributable to violent and repeat offenders across Canada. Mr. Speaker, we heard from provincial justice ministers and public safety ministers that we needed to attack repeat violent offenders with weapons. That is precisely what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. We've done it in consultation with stakeholders. We've worked and listened to police associations across Canada, and we have a bill that will strengthen our legislative framework.
Honourable Member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Coast Guard protects our coasts and oceans from the Pacific all the way to the Atlantic and everything in between. Their work keeps Canadians safe on the water and creates the conditions for a thriving blue economy. Can the Minister of Fisheries, Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard please inform this House how we're making sure that the Coast Guard has the ships that they need to serve Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member of Sunshine Coast Sea to Sky Country for his West Vancouver Sunshine Coast Sea to Sky Country for his question and his great work on coastal matters. The Canadian Coast Guard does provide critical services in our waters, everything from aiding navigation to spill cleanup and saving lives, which is why I was so pleased to announce $2.5 billion in federal investment to build up to 61 new vessels for the Coast Guard, and that will give them the modern capabilities that they need while creating good-paying jobs right across Canada.
The Honourable Member for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Mr. Speaker, the development of a co-managed marine safety centre with the Pacheedaht First Nation in my riding seems to have been abandoned by this government. This project is supposed to be a meaningful effort for reconciliation and protecting our oceans. Now, when I previously raised this issue with the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, she didn't answer my question, and there was no mention of the agreement with the Pacheedaht, who have now been waiting for over 3 years. So I'll ask again, why does it appear that the government is ignoring the Pacheedaht First Nation and stalling the development of this important project? When will we see the commitment?
Hear, hear. Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll thank the member for that question. And our and my commitment to Indigenous reconciliation is absolute, and it is a really strong focus of our government, including our funding. It's a very strong focus of the Fisheries Ministry and Department, and from me personally. So I will investigate the situation that the member has just raised, and I can commit that we will do everything that we can to ensure that any commitments are met. Reconciliation is one of our government's very top priorities.
Honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On June 19th, 2019, some members of this place will recall that we voted that we were in a climate emergency. The next day, we bought a pipeline. Now Canada is hotter and drier, and we're experiencing wildfires across this country. We have to thank our firefighters and be so grateful to them. Can the Honourable Minister for Emergency Preparedness, who I know is working very hard, tell us how many provinces have wildfires right now, and how much earlier in the season are we experiencing that Canada is in flames?
The Honourable Minister for Emergency Preparedness.
I'd like to thank the member for this important question. There are currently 179 wildfires burning in Canada, 68 of which are out of control. Those fires are in British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, over 20,000 people have been evacuated from their communities. Nearly 1 million hectares of forest has been lost to these fires. And frankly, Mr. Speaker, this season has begun weeks ahead of what we would normally anticipate. And these fires are occurring at unprecedented levels.
That's all the time we have before we go to points of order. À la suite de discussion.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, it's my understanding that there is consent for a moment of silence in the memory of Michel Côté.
Members to rise. Thank you. Merci.